The story begins in South Korea with a man named Dong Chol, who works in seafood and fish distribution near the sea. Dong used to be a gangster in the past, but after getting married, he left that life behind at his wife's request and started working honestly. Dong works here with his friend Chun Sik, and one day the two of them see their union leader Kang threatening a man because he failed to pay protection money. Chun reminds Dong that Kang hasn't paid salaries to them and many other workers for several months. But Dong does not want to get involved in any conflict right now, and when Kang walks past them, Dong respectfully lowers his head in front of him. Just then, Dong receives a phone call from a man and goes to meet him. Actually, Dong wants to quit this job and start his own business, for which he has already invested money in several businesses. One of those investments is in the crab business, because in the seafood market, crabs can sell for even more than high-quality fish. The supplier shows Dong not an ordinary crab, but a sample of a giant king crab. After seeing its size and quality, Dong places a huge order and gives the supplier a check worth 100 million won, money he borrowed from the bank as a loan. In the next scene, we meet Dong's wife Jisoo, who is just as hardworking as him. To support the household, she works double shifts at an old age home and a restaurant. After finishing their respective shifts, Dong picks Jisoo up to take her home, and on the way, he nervously asks her whether he should invest in the king crab business. Hearing this, Jisoo grabs his ears and scolds him because Dong had already lost their savings in similar businesses where he got scammed before, so she strongly refuses to let him do it again. Meanwhile, in the same city, we see a loan shark and gangster named Tae entering an apartment with his men. After breaking down the door, Tae's goons brutally beat up a man because he cannot repay the money he borrowed. Tae is about to smash the man's head with a brick when the man's young daughter arrives there. The moment Tae sees the girl, he becomes pleased because he is obsessed with beautiful women. So in exchange for the man's debt, he forcibly takes the daughter away with him. As Tae's men are dragging the girl into their car, Dong and Jisoo happen to be returning home on the same road. At a traffic signal, Tae's car accidentally crashes into Dong's car from behind. Dong steps out and checks the damage to his vehicle. He tells Dusik to contact the insurance company so the car can be repaired. But Tae is holding the kidnapped girl in the back seat, so Dusik simply throws some money at Dong and tries to leave. Jisoo notices that the driver threw money in Dong's face and angrily gets out of the car, telling Dong to call the police. At that moment, Tae notices Jisoo for the first time and instantly becomes obsessed with her too. So he steps out of the car and violently beats up his own driver, Dusik, before apologizing to Jisoo on his behalf. Seeing all this, Dong and Jisoo simply leave the place.
The next day, Dong visits Kang's office and asks for his unpaid salary, but Kang ignores him and hands him only a small amount of money. Dong becomes furious but somehow manages to control himself. After that, he meets Chun, where they learn that their king crab consignment has been held up at a port in China. Hearing this, both of them become extremely upset. Dong starts feeling that this investment might fail too, and he fears that Jisoo will become very angry once she finds out about it. That evening, Dong takes Jisoo to a restaurant to celebrate her birthday. Jisoo tells him not to waste too much money, but Dong finally reveals the truth about the king crab business and says that soon all of their financial problems will be over. But hearing this makes Jisoo extremely angry, and she starts yelling at Dong in front of everyone because, according to her, he has taken another huge loss by borrowing money from the bank once again. When Dong goes to get her birthday cake, Jisoo leaves for home alone in a cab. After reaching home, Jisoo realizes that she may have overreacted. She sends Dong a message saying that she will always support him in every financial decision he makes. Reading her message makes Dong happy, and he packs dinner and the cake for her before heading back home. On the way, Dong is forced to stop his car because a man named Lim is standing in the middle of the road, shifting some saman from another car into his own vehicle. In reality, Lim is one of Tae's men, and this entire situation is intentionally created to delay Dong from reaching home. Meanwhile, one of Tae's men sneaks into Dong's apartment, knocks Jisoo unconscious, and kidnaps her. When Dong finally reaches home, he discovers that Jisoo is missing and the apartment is completely messed up. Panicking, he immediately rushes to the police station and files a report. The police show him CCTV footage from outside his apartment, but before the kidnapping, someone had already cut the camera wires. Because of this, no suspicious activity was recorded. As Dong walks out of the police station, he receives a call from Tae. Tae lets him hear Jisoo crying on the phone and tells him that there's a business card placed on his refrigerator. He orders Dong to come alone to the address written on it. When Dong reaches the restaurant mentioned on the card, he finds a bag of cash there there. Tae tells Dong over the phone that this money is the price of his wife and she will never return home again. Dong takes the bag of cash straight to the police and explains the entire situation. After hearing the case, the police tell him that this appears to be a human trafficking case, and realistically there is not much they can do. On the notice board inside the station, Dong notices photos of several other missing women just like Jisoo. He realizes that many girls have disappeared in the same way and none of them have ever been found. At this point, Dom completely loses hope in the police, so he decides to find his wife on his own. Together with Chun, he meets a private detective named Bear, a man famous for being able to find anyone. However, Bear demands a huge amount of money for the job, but Dong has already handed over all the money Tae gave him to the police, and they have locked it away as evidence. Now desperate for cash, Dong goes to Kang and demands all of his unpaid salary. As usual, Kang starts making excuses, but when one of Kang's men pushes Dong out of the office, Dong finally snaps and brutally beats them up. Seeing Dong's terrifying old gangster side return, Kang immediately hands over all of his money. After getting the cash, Dong and Chun return to Bear and ask him to begin the investigation. Using CCTV footage, Bear manages to track down the number plate of the car that was used by the man who delivered the bag of cash to Dong. Soon after, they even reach the home of the car's owner, who turns out to be an alcoholic and gambling addict. The man gives them the address of an underground gambling den where he had sold his car to pay off gambling debts. The three of them head to the gambling area and meet the female boss running the place. However, she refuses to share any information about her clients and instead orders her men to attack them.
At that moment, Dong completely transforms back into his old self and starts brutally destroying all of her men. Terrified, the woman tries to run away, but Chun stops her. Finally, she gives them a nightclub card and reveals that the car connected to the number plate is frequently used at that nightclub. Dong immediately heads there, but after reaching the club, he discovers that the card is old, and the new owner claims to know nothing about the vehicle. However, while leaving the club, Dong notices a van from which several girls are stepping out. The driver of the van is none other than Lim, the same man who blocked Dong's road on the night Jisoo was kidnapped. The moment Dong sees him, he realizes that Lim definitely knows something. Dong approaches him and tries to talk, but Lim quickly speeds away in his vehicle before Dong can catch him. Just then, Dong receives a call from the police station. They inform him that a dead body resembling Jisoo has been found, and he is asked to come identify it. Dong becomes extremely nervous while looking at the photographs, but thankfully, the body does not belong to Jisoo. The next day, after continuing his investigation, Bear gives Dong some shocking news. Bear reveals that the dead woman had actually been missing for the last 2 years. Before disappearing, she had been lying in a coma in a hospital bed. Her husband had once personally gone to the police and confessed that he himself was responsible for her disappearance. Dong and Chun attend the woman's funeral service and meet her husband there. The man explains that his wife had been in a coma for 2 years, and in order to collect money for her treatment, he had even appeared on a TV show for help. Sometime after that, a gangster named Tae came to meet him. The man says that Tae also gave him a bag full of money in exchange for his wife, since she was already like a dead body to him at the time. He accepted the money, but now he regrets that decision more than anything because he has learned that his wife was still alive until just a few days ago, and he should never have sold her away. Before Dong leaves, the man hands him a package containing 2 years worth of research and evidence about Tae's gang. But as soon as Dong steps outside and starts looking through the evidence, the man jumps off the building and kills himself because he no longer wants to live without his wife. Inside the documents, Dong finds photographs of Seok and immediately recognizes him from the night of the car accident. Using the business card, Dong tracks down Seok's office. When Dong confronts him, Seok pretends not to recognize him, so Dong forcefully kidnaps him and takes him away. Seok is brought to Bear's office where they torture him for hours, but he refuses to speak. Then suddenly, Tae video calls Seok, and Jisoo was also visible with him. Tae orders Dong to kill Seok because he suspects that Seok has already revealed everything. When Dong refuses, Tae starts drowning Jisoo in a swimming pool. To stop him, Dong appears to strangle Seok to death in front of the camera. Tae then tells Dong that if he wants his wife back, he must return all the money by tonight. After the call ends, we discover that Seok is actually still alive. Dong revives him with a slap because he had only pressed
pressed a nerve in Do-seok's neck to make him temporarily unconscious in front of Tae-yi.
Now terrified, Do-seok finally starts talking. He reveals that Tae-yi cares about no one and has trapped countless poor men in loan debts over the years. After trapping them, he kidnaps the women in their families and sells them to foreign countries. Sometimes, Tae-yi even abducts women simply for his own pleasure. Dong, however, is the first man who has refused to take Tae-yi's money. The money Tae-yi gave Dong is still locked away at the police station as evidence, so Bear and Chun disguise themselves as high-ranking prosecutors and go to the station to retrieve it. They tell the police that the cash is needed for their investigation. At first, nobody suspects them, but before handing over the money, one police officer calls his supervisor and learns that no such investigation exists. Bear's lie is exposed. To help Bear and Chun escape arrest, Dong sets a parked car in the police station parking lot on fire. Taking advantage of the explosion and chaos, Bear and Chun escape outside and flee with Dong. In the next scene, we see the place where Tae-yi keeps all the kidnapped girls imprisoned. Dong calls Tae-yi and asks where he should exchange the money for Jisoo. Tae-yi gives him the location and secretly orders his men to kill Dong once they get the cash. Meanwhile, Jisoo manages to find a window inside the building. Together with another girl, she desperately loosens the window grill and squeezes through the tiny opening to escape. But before the second girl can get out, one of the kidnappers spots them. Jisoo is forced to run away alone. After escaping the building, Jisoo stops a passing car on the road and begs the driver to take her to the police station. However, because of the explosion at the station, a massive traffic jam has formed outside. So Jisoo gets out of the car and starts running toward the police station on foot. But right at the gate, Tae-yi and his men catch her again and throw her back into the van. Meanwhile, Dong reaches the location Tae-yi gave him. He tells Bear and Chun to stay outside while he enters the building alone. Inside, Dong brutally beats every one of Tae-yi's men who comes in his way. Even Tae-yi's massive bodyguard fails to stop him. Dong also storms into the room guarded by Lim and defeats him too. But despite all this, he still cannot find Jisoo, because on Tae-yi's orders, his men are already loading all the kidnapped earls into vans to move them elsewhere. Seeing this, Bear and Chun call the police. Before the police arrive, the two of them fight the gangsters themselves and somehow manage to stop the vans from leaving. Soon, the police arrive, arrest the criminals, and rescue all the girls. A disappointed Dong starts leaving the place, but suddenly he notices Tae-yi driving toward the building. Jisoo is inside Tae-yi's car. Tae-yi's driver immediately speeds away to avoid Dong, but Dong refuses to stop chasing them. On a flyover, Dong drives ahead of their vehicle to block them, causing his own car to crash and fall off the flyover. Seeing this, Tae-yi grabs an axe from his car and walks toward Dong to finish him off. But Dong suddenly pulls Tae-yi inside the car through the sunroof and begins beating him mercilessly. He even throws Tae-yi out of the car and continues attacking him, despite Tae-yi begging for mercy. Dong does not stop until Tae-yi is completely unconscious. After that, Dong rushes into Tae-yi's car and wakes Jisoo up. Seeing her alive makes him incredibly emotional and relieved. Soon, ambulances and police cars arrive at the scene. After Tae-yi and his entire gang are arrested, Dong becomes a national hero and his face starts appearing all over the news. In the end, the king crab shipment finally reaches South Korea. Thanks to his investment, Dong earns 20 times the profit and becomes extremely rich. Dong and Jisoo not only become famous, but also open their own king crab restaurant together. For another amazing Korean crime movie, click on the video on the left or right. Until then, stay safe and keep watching Thoughts in Action.